Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. In all my years as a trauma nurse, I've come to trust two things without question: vitals and silence. Not the kind of silence you get in a quiet room, with the hum of machines and the soft shuffle of feet. No, I'm talking about the silence that slams into you after chaos dies down, the kind that settles in after a monitor flatlines, or in the still seconds after a family scream. That silence burrows into your bones. You brace yourself for the blood, the broken bodies, the antiseptic stench baked into your scrubs. But the silence? You never really get used to that. I'm Dana Whitaker, 42, charge nurse at St. Helens General, Western Michigan. I've been working the ER night shift since I was 24. I've seen just about everything: heart attacks, overdoses, stabbings, gunshot wounds, and the kind of self-inflicted damage that makes you question what the human body can survive. Eventually, your brain stops trying to understand it. You just fix what you can, call the time when you can't, zip the bags and keep going, until something makes you stop. That night was October 14th, a Friday, early fall. The ER had that predictable mix: seasonal colds, a few drunks who misjudged their limits, and some high school football kids with sprains or concussions. It was busy, sure, but nothing we couldn't handle. I was on with Dr. Patel, who had this habit of rechecking every resident's orders like he trusted none of them. And Holly, newer nurse 2 months in, still jumped like a rabbit every time a monitor so much as beeped. The worst we'd had so far was a dislocated shoulder and a panic attack that mimicked a heart attack. Standard stuff. We'd just rolled a seizure patient into observation when the radio crackled. Dispatch to St. Helens, trauma incoming, male, 30s, motorcycle collision, no helmet, high velocity. ETA 3 minutes. I felt the shift before they even came through the doors. You learn it after a while. The way paramedics move when they think they've already lost the patient. It's not frantic. It's practiced, efficient, a sort of desperate choreography. They don't run. They just move with urgency, like they're trying to beat the inevitable by seconds. They burst in like a storm. We cleared trauma room 7 without a word. I remember the gurney wheels screeching across the tile. It's a sound I've heard 1,000 times, but for some reason that night, it hit different. Too sharp, too loud. Like the whole hospital inhaled and held its breath. The kind of moment you don't hear, you feel. The patient was wrecked. ID in the wallet said Eric Matz, 34. Road rash stripped the flesh down the left side of his body, muscle and tendon exposed like someone had tried to peel him apart. His chest was crushed on one side. So much blood, I thought. He's already gone. But the paramedics were still doing compressions, bagging, pushing fluids. Crash cart, Dr. Patel barked. We worked him like he had a chance. Maybe he did. We did everything. Chest tube, paddles, epi, the whole playbook. If you've ever seen a medical drama, imagine that, but louder, messier, and without the soundtrack. Just machines wailing, people shouting, sweat stinging your eyes. Time of death, 11:47 p.m. We all stepped back. No one spoke. My hands trembled slightly. I glanced at the clock. Then I did what I always do when a death's especially brutal. I zipped the bag myself. It's a small, stupid ritual, but it feels like the only respectful thing left. He looked peaceful. Not in that poetic, sleep-like way people always say, but in a more clinical, jarring way. Mouth open, eyes half-lidded. Like someone hit pause mid-sentence. He was just done. We dimmed the lights, gave the room a few minutes like we always do. Not for ghosts or religion or any of that, just dignity. A moment before the porters come to take them away like freight. I asked Holly to stand by the door. She looked pale, but nodded. I walked out to the nurse's station, started pulling the paperwork, wiping blood off my arms. I just needed a minute to breathe. And then I heard it. A scream. Not a groan. Not some reflex noise from a dead body. This was a scream. Long, raw, full of something human and unbearable. Pain, rage, horror. It cut through the air like a blade. I jerked my head up. Holly was already stumbling back from room 7, her face the color of chalk. Down the hallway, one of the techs froze mid-step. No one moved. Eyes wide, I met Holly at the door. "You heard that, right?" I asked. She didn't speak, just nodded, slow and tight, like her neck didn't want to move. I pushed the door open. Lights were steady. No flicker, no sudden chill in the air, no monitors blinking back to life. Just the still form of Eric Matz, zipped halfway into the body bag, mouth gaping like he'd just finished making that god-awful sound. No pulse, no respiration. Still dead, still cold. But the room felt full, like something had just left, or maybe hadn't left yet. I stepped inside slowly, my heart ticking up even though my brain was already rationalizing. Adrenaline, stress, echoes maybe. I checked everything again. Pupils, reflexes, corneal response. Nothing. I hesitated, then unzipped the bag a few more inches, hands steady more from habit than confidence. I leaned in, checked vitals one more time. Still nothing. Dead. Later, we pulled the hallway footage. It showed Holly stepping back, showed me walking in. No one else entered or exited. No shadows. No sudden lights. No movement at all in the room. But you can hear it. The scream. Muffled but distinct. Long. Wretched. Like it was clawing its way out of a throat that shouldn't work anymore. And it was undeniably coming from inside Trauma Room 7. I logged it as calmly as I could. Clinically unexplained auditory anomaly. Reported in Trauma Room 7. No changes in patient vitals. No staff present in room at time of occurrence. Witnessed by multiple employees. I didn't write, "Dead man screamed." I'm not that far gone. Holly didn't talk about it. But later that night I sat in the break room, my sandwich untouched, just staring through the vending machine like it had answers. She came in, arms crossed, face still pale. "What if," she started, then paused. "What if he didn't know he was dead yet?" I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have thoughts, just none I wanted to say out loud. 2 weeks went by. Trauma Room 7 sat empty longer than it should have. Not policy, just inertia. Quiet avoidance. No one requested it. No one said anything. But we all knew. Eventually, we got a new patient in there. Diabetic ketoacidosis. Not trauma. Stable. Older guy. He pulled through. But something about him was off. Night nurse Kevin told me the patient had kept asking, "Who's the screaming man?" Claimed he woke up around 2 a.m. and saw someone standing at the foot of the bed. Just standing there. Mouth open like he wanted to speak but couldn't. The guy was lucid. No dementia, no history of hallucinations. Labs normal. He was discharged the next morning. Died of a heart attack 3 days later. We don't typically look up patients. It's discouraged. But people are people. One of the residents got curious. Googled Eric Matz. Turns out he was a volunteer firefighter. In 2015, he responded to a rollover. 3 teenagers. Only one survived. Matz had pulled one boy from the wreck who was still breathing. Then the car caught fire. He had to back off. Couldn't get the other kid out. The boy screamed, loud and long and helpless, while the flames took him. There was an inquiry. Matz wasn't blamed, but his records told the rest of the story. 4 ER visits in the years that followed. Chest pain, insomnia, PTSD. He stopped taking calls a year before his crash. You can interpret that however you want. Maybe guilt was a weight he never dropped. Maybe he ran from it until it wrapped itself around him and didn't let go. Maybe the scream he gave that night wasn't even his. Maybe it was something he carried for a decade, something so deep it got trapped in his bones and only found its way out when he was finally quiet enough to let it. These days, Trauma Room 7 looks different. New bed, fresh paint, new monitor, no visible scars. But sometimes, when I walk by on a quiet night, I catch myself holding my breath. Not because I'm scared. Not exactly. It feels like respect. I don't pretend to understand what happened that night. But I know it was real. And I know there are things worse than death. Like not knowing it happened. Like not being ready. I've heard a lot of screams in my career, but that one still echoes. And sometimes, just before dawn, when the ER settles and the silence comes back in layers, I swear I hear something. A scratch in the air. A breath that never made it out. And I wonder if fear, real fear, follows us, even after the heart stops. I used to think I'd seen it all. That's the lie we tell ourselves. A kind of armor we build to get through the next shift. You don't last more than 5 years in the emergency department at Eastgate Memorial without collecting scars. Some you can see. Burns, scratches, the odd broken finger. Most, though, you carry somewhere deeper. You learn how to patch up the gunshot wounds, the shattered limbs from car crashes, the blue-lipped overdoses, and how to stand steady when someone's sobbing over a body that was alive just minutes earlier. People laughing 1 minute, seizing the next. Dead before the echo of their last joke fades. So you learn to ride it. You learn how to stay just detached enough to function, to keep your voice calm and your hands steady, even when someone's entire world shatters in front of you. But that night still follows me. My name is Dr. Adrian Ross. I've been an ER attending for nearly 10 years now. Eastgate's not a big city, mid-sized, Midwest, just enough crime to stay busy, just small enough that strangers know your name when you're off duty. I did my residency in Chicago, and I thought nothing could beat that chaos. I was wrong. Small towns have their own kind of madness, more intimate, less predictable. I wasn't even supposed to be there that night. I'd swapped shifts with Javi, one of our younger attendings. His sister was in town, and he'd asked if I could cover. I didn't mind. Friday nights were usually routine. Bar fights, drunk drivers, the occasional OD or cardiac arrest. Messy, sure, but familiar. Nothing could have prepared me for Nathan. The call came in at 9:42 p.m. I remember the exact time. EMS, young male, mid-20s, found unresponsive on his apartment floor by his roommate. Shallow breathing, non-verbal, Glasgow coma score of 3, pupils fixed and dilated. I was at the nurses' station with Lexi, one of our veteran nurses, going over notes from a psych patient we'd just transferred upstairs. The radio cracked and we both turned. Listened. GCS of 3, Lexi murmured, brow furrowing. That's practically coma, I said under my breath. Fixed and dilated pupils. Shit, she finished for me. We moved fast. Room 3 was ready in under 2 minutes. Monitors prepped, crash cart stationed at the door, intubation tray opened and waiting. Then they wheeled him in. He looked so normal. Young guy, maybe 25. Pale, yes, a little unshaven, but he was still in pajama pants and a hoodie. No blood, no bruises. He could have been on his couch watching Netflix, but instead he was half dead on a gurney. Name's Nathan Hart, one of the paramedics said. Roommate found him around 9:00, last seen maybe 2 hours before that. He was fine, eating dinner, no known medical issues. No trauma, no drugs? I asked, listening closely to the breath sounds as I took over the bag valve mask. None that we found. Place was clean. He's breathing on his own? I confirmed. Yeah, but irregular. Heart rate's at 82, BP's 120/70. His pupils were still blown. No corneal reflex, no response to pain. But his skin was warm, chest rising slowly, a body going through the motions. But he wasn't there. We rushed him into CT. The scan was done within 15 minutes. Massive cerebral edema, the radiologist told me grimly. Midline shift, brainstem compression. It's full herniation. I felt something close around my throat. I've seen strokes, plenty of them. Usually older patients, smokers, diabetics, you expect it. But Nathan, 25, no hypertension, no red flags, No goddamn reason. Neurology confirmed it within the hour. Dr. Chen, the attending, ran the full series of brain death tests. Cold calorics, apnea, doll's eyes. Nothing. Flat EEG. He's gone, Chen said gently. No attempt to soften it with false hope. Clinically and legally, brain death. I nodded, jaw clenched so tight it ached. His mother, Elaine, arrived just before midnight, her 2 daughters, Rachel and Becca, trailing behind her. I've had to deliver bad news before, too many times. But this was different. Elaine didn't scream, didn't collapse. She didn't cry. She didn't scream or drop to the floor. Elaine just blinked like she hadn't quite processed what I'd said. He was just eating pizza, she whispered. Said he'd do the dishes after his show. They agreed to organ donation without hesitation. Elaine said Nathan was a registered donor. He'd want to help, she added, voice cracking around the edges. The ICU team took over around midnight. Normally, that's my cue to step back. But I couldn't. Something in me couldn't leave. Maybe it was because Nathan still looked alive, his chest rising and falling in rhythm, his skin warm, his heart beating steadily beneath the ventilator's soft hiss. But there was nothing behind his eyes. No spark, just the silence of someone who was already gone. Lexi and I stood in the hallway, watching as they wheeled him up to the surgical floor. She leaned close, voice low. It's always weirder when they look peaceful, she murmured, like they're just waiting for something. I nodded, but I didn't have words for what I was feeling. Just a cold knot in my stomach I couldn't name. It was exactly 2:14 a.m. when one of the OR nurses, Jordan, found me. Dr. Ross, she said, her voice tight, you should come upstairs. What's wrong? I asked. She hesitated. They haven't started the harvest. But the heart, it reacted. I felt my stomach drop. Reacted how? I asked. Just come. The surgical suite was far too quiet when I stepped in. The transplant team was gathered in a tense semicircle around Nathan's open chest. Dr. Romesh Kapoor, the lead surgeon, steady, unshakable Kapoor, stood with his gloves bunched in one hand, eyes wide. His assistant looked pale, nearly ghostly. What happened? I asked. Kapoor glanced up. We were prepping, standard protocol. We hadn't started yet, no stimulation, no clamps. I just laid a hand on the heart. He paused, swallowed. It hit back. I blinked. Excuse me? It pounded. Once, then again, then picked up. Not a flutter, not fibrillation, a rhythm. Like it was aware. Silence settled like fog. Kapoor wasn't a man prone to exaggeration. I'd seen him calmly perform surgery during a thunderstorm blackout, his hands never shaking. Did you monitor it? I asked. He shook his head. No leads yet. We weren't at that point. But one of the assistants, she swears she saw a spike on the EKG screen across the room, only for a second. But there was no patient connected. I stared at him. She saw a spike on a machine that wasn't even hooked up? He nodded slowly. We all felt it. Every one of us. They waited. 10 minutes, then 15. Repeated the brain death tests. No change. Still legally and clinically gone. Eventually, they proceeded with the transplant. Nathan's heart was placed into a 38-year-old man who'd been teetering on the edge. It beat. It stabilized. It thrived. But none of us ever forgot what happened in that room. That's when the dreams started. Not nightmares, not exactly, just strange. I'd find myself standing in a dim, endless hallway, the steady beep of a heart monitor echoing somewhere ahead. I'd follow it, each step heavier than the last, until I reached a closed door. Inside, Nathan lay in a hospital bed, wide awake, his eyes fixed on mine. I'm not ready, he would whisper. 2 weeks later, Elaine called the hospital. It wasn't a complaint, just a question. Do you know where his heart went? She asked softly. I'm sorry, I said. That information's confidential. I understand, she said. It's just, I had a dream. He was standing in a hallway, not upset, just lost, like he was looking for something. I think, her voice trembled. I think he was trying to find his way back. 3 months later, I bumped into Dr. Kapoor in the hospital hallway. He looked tired. How's the recipient doing? I asked. Physically? He nodded. He's strong, healthier than he's been in years, but he's been having dreams. Says he sees places he's never been. Says names he doesn't know. He asked his wife who Rachel and Becca were. My chest tightened. He doesn't even remember saying it, Kapoor added. But sometimes he wakes up crying. Says he hears a voice. Says it tells him, I'm not ready. Science tells us that memory lives in the brain. That emotions are electrical signals, chemicals, patterns of behavior, not ghosts, not spirits. But I've worked in medicine long enough to know the body holds on to things. The heart, especially, has its own kind of memory, autonomic, silent, stubborn. I'm still at Eastgate, still taking shifts, still riding the rhythm of the ER. But I never forgot Nathan Hart. His heart saved a man's life. But part of him, some small, persistent part, never let go. Because sometimes the mind lets go, but the heart remembers. I don't believe in signs. Not anymore. You work enough night shifts in a trauma ward and whatever magic you once believed in, it bleeds out of you. You see too much. The raw, ugly truth of it all. Accidents, emergencies, pain with no narrative arc. You learn pretty quick that most things don't happen for a reason. They just happen. Still, some nights find a way to pry open the armor you've built, to wedge a crack in all that practical logic. Let me take you back. Not to some haunted house or cursed antique. No demons or ghosts, just a regular Tuesday at Memorial West Medical Center in Springfield. Tucked off I-44, one of those city hospitals that always feels like it's 5 minutes from collapse. Never enough beds, never enough staff, and way too many incoming calls. I'd been a trauma nurse for 11 years, seen it all. Senseless shootings, pile-ups on the freeway, people ripped apart, sometimes literally. You get desensitized, sure, but not numb. Not me. Not yet. Name's Naomi Brooks. I was 36 that year. My kid had just started middle school. I had an ex-husband who still texted me on birthdays, and a second-hand Toyota that rattled every time I turned left. Glamorous, I know. Anyway, that shift started like any other. I clocked in at 6:42 p.m., threw my hair into a messy bun, grabbed a stale coffee from the staff lounge and began my rounds. Bay 3 had an overdose from the shelters, barely responsive. Room 6 was a guy convinced he was having a heart attack. Turned out he just needed a Xanax and someone to listen. Then, at 7:11 p.m., the trauma pager shrieked, MVC incoming. Dispatch crackled through the radio. Female, early 30s, sedan versus pickup, ejected on impact. ETA 7 minutes. I scribbled it all down and called out to the team. Dr. Liang, one of our trauma surgeons, was already pulling on gloves before I finished the sentence. The ambulance rolled in at 7:19. They wheeled her through the doors fast. She was pale, unconscious, blood tangled in her light brown hair. The entire right side of her face was swelling up fast. Vitals? I asked, snapping on gloves. A paramedic answered as we sliced open her clothing and moved into trauma protocol. Clara Reynolds, 35, unresponsive at the scene. Coded once en route. Got her back after 3 minutes. Pelvis is crushed. BP tanking. I remember her necklace. A thin silver chain with a tiny charm that read, breathe. I couldn't stop staring at it while I bagged her, forcing air into lungs that didn't want to hold it. Get Oneg up here. Now, Dr. Liang barked. We've got seconds. We were mid-chaos when triage called out from the double doors. Naomi? I turned. It was Kim, one of our newer nurses. She looked rattled. Another trauma just came in, she said, waving me over. Woman, same age. Solo vehicle accident. Unconscious at the scene. Okay, I said, still half focused on the IV I was spiking. She's named Clara too. I stopped cold, fluid bag hanging limp in my hands. What? Clara, Kim repeated. Clara Simmons, date of birth, March 14th, 1989. My mouth went dry. That's the same birth date as this one. Kim gave a small, uncertain laugh, like she knew it was weird but wasn't ready to label it as anything more than a coincidence. Probably a mix-up, she said. Bad ID scan or something. But we both knew better. I went back to Clara Reynolds, tried to keep my hands steady as we prepped her for emergency surgery. She coded again. We brought her back. For a little while. But her body couldn't take it. We called time of death at 8:04 p.m. She was gone, just like that. 1 minute you're trying to pull someone back from the brink. The next you're pulling the sheet over their face and then the trauma doors burst open again. Second Clara, someone muttered as the paramedics rushed through the doors again. They wheeled her in fast. She looked nothing like the first. Dark skin, tight curls soaked with blood. A long-healed scar ran the length of her left forearm. Her clothes were shredded from the crash. As we transferred her to the table, I noticed her lips were moving. She's trying to speak, Dr. Lang noted, leaning in. I stepped closer, took her hand. It was cold but still responsive. Her eyes fluttered, barely open. Cracked lips trembled. She's waiting, she whispered. I blinked. Who's waiting? She tried again, voice fading. She's waiting. That was all. Her heart rate spiked hard, then flatlined. We started compressions. 30 seconds in, still no pulse. We pushed for 12 minutes. Epinephrine, defibrillation, the works. Nothing. Time of death, 8:18 p.m. You want to tell yourself it's coincidence. You need it to be coincidence. That's the only way to keep functioning. So you shove it under paperwork. Time of death, vitals, labs, meds. But that night, something crawled under my skin and stayed there. We ran every check. Photos, names, birth certificates, socials. 2 completely different women. No blood relation. No shared hometowns. One from Branson, the other from Fayetteville. No friends in common. No overlap. Nothing. Except this. Both were named Clara. Both were born on March 14th, 1989. Both died in the same ER. 14 minutes apart. For a few days we laughed it off. Doppelgangers. Glitches in the matrix. Nervous jokes to make sense of something that didn't make sense. But the joking didn't last. People started avoiding room 4. Nurses whispered about the vitals monitor spiking at night, even when no one was admitted. Kim, the same nurse from earlier, swore she heard breathing in the room once while she was dimming the lights. I told her it was probably the HVAC. The vent right above the bed sometimes rattled when the pressure dropped, but I didn't believe it. Not really. A week later, I stayed late charting, trying to catch up. Just after 2 a.m., the ER had fallen into a rare stillness. I got up to grab something from the vending machines passed by room 4. The light inside was flickering. I paused. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. I stepped in. The air smelled like antiseptic and dust. The bed was stripped bare, monitors off. Everything quiet, still, in place. But I felt it, this pressure, like someone was holding their breath in the far corner, watching. I turned. Nothing. Then I saw it. On the bed. A small charm. Silver. Breathe. I didn't tell anyone, just picked it up and slipped it into my pocket. I still have it. Sometimes I think about putting it back, leaving it in room 4 where it came from, but I don't know what that would mean, and I'm not sure I want to find out. Weeks passed, then months. Another trauma night. Jane Doe. No ID, car accident, broken pelvis, dark curls, scar on her forearm. My stomach turned. She's not Clara, the paramedic said when I asked. She said her name was Mara. We saved her. She stabilized overnight, woke up disoriented but alert. The next morning I walked in to check on her. She was staring at the ceiling, tears slipping down her cheeks. "She told me," she whispered. I didn't ask who. I just sat beside her, silent. "She said it's not my time," Mara murmured. "Said she's still waiting for someone." I swallowed. My throat felt tight. "Who is she waiting for, Mara?" Mara turned her head, looked me straight in the eye. "You." That was 3 years ago. I've changed hospitals since. Moved to a smaller clinic just outside Joplin. Slower pace. Fewer traumas. But some nights I still dream of the ER, of room 4, of the 2 Claras. One pale, one dark. Both broken. Both whispering things that don't belong in any medical report. And every time I wake up, the first thing I do is check my pocket. The charm is always there. Breathe. But some nights, I swear I hear someone else exhale with me. I've worked night shifts at Pine Brook General for almost 8 years. In that time, I've seen the usual trauma: car wrecks, overdoses, gunshot wounds. I've treated neglected elderly patients found unconscious in apartments that smelled of rot and cat urine. Every nurse collects their share of stories. We trade them like campfire tales during the slow hours. Some funny, some unbearably sad, others so bizarre they sound made up. But there's one night I never talk about. Not because I think people won't believe me, but because I don't understand what happened. My name is Leah Brandt. I'm 34, a trauma-certified RN with a specialty in psychiatric stabilization. I work the ER because I like the pace. The chaos somehow makes sense to me. Beneath the panic, there's structure, charts to follow, vitals to stabilize, protocols to cling to when everything else feels like it's unraveling. I've seen death. I've touched it, pronounced it, zipped it into body bags. I've cried in the supply closet after a failed code, cursed at the ceiling in an empty hallway, tasted metallic grief in my throat. But that night was different. It was a Tuesday in early October. My fiancé, Joel, had just left for a 3-day conference in Charlotte. I kissed him goodbye around 2 p.m., made some tea, and lay down for a nap before my 7 p.m. shift. That was the last completely normal moment I remember having. Pine Brook's night ER usually starts quiet. People don't tend to crash their cars or stab each other until closer to midnight. Around 10:30, I was in trauma room 2, checking on a drunk who'd taken a nasty tumble down his apartment stairs when the call came over the radio. Unit 231 inbound. Unidentified male, mid-40s, altered mental status, non-violent, but uncooperative. No visible injuries. Picked up outside Mercy Chapel on Wilton Drive. Jenny, our charge nurse, raised an eyebrow. No injuries apparently, just screaming in the parking lot. PD got called but stood down. No crime committed. Drugs? I asked. Negative. No needle marks, looks clean. EMTs are guessing psychosis. I hesitated. I'd had a hell of a week. 3 psych patients back to back, including a guy who tried to cut out his own tongue with a plastic spork. But Jenny looked just as fried as I felt. "Yeah," I sighed. "I've got it." Room 4. The man came in barefoot, wearing only black sweatpants and a torn, sweat-stained undershirt. No wallet, no phone, nothing in his pockets, not even lint. His skin under the fluorescence looked sallow, almost gray, and his hair clung damply to his scalp. The paramedics had soft restrained him, but said he hadn't fought, just wouldn't stop muttering. When I walked in, he stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. Like a switch had been flipped. He turned his head and stared at me, dead still. His eyes were hazel, pupils oddly dilated, no blinking, just staring, locked onto mine. I kept my voice calm. "Hi there, my name's Leah. I'll be your nurse tonight, okay?" His lips moved, no sound. Then slowly, like his brain had to manually remember how to form words, he said, "Leah Brandt." It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a guess. It was a statement. A chill snaked under my skin. "You've been here before?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral while checking the wristband. "Nothing. No name, no Dalby, no hospital number, just John Doe." "Did someone tell you my name?" I asked. No answer. Just that stare. I glanced down at my badge clipped to my scrubs. Maybe he saw it. Maybe one of the medics mentioned it. But the way he said it, there was weight to it, like he wasn't saying it for the first time. "Can you tell me your name?" I asked, sitting down at the computer station. "Do you know where you are?" That's when the muttering began again. Fast, garbled. I couldn't make out the words at first, just noise. Then I realized it wasn't gibberish. It was English but reversed, rewound, like a record spinning the wrong way. "Deliver us. He is not here. The light cannot save you." Over and over. My hands trembled slightly as I began a preliminary chart. I've heard every kind of word salad before. Schizophrenia, meth-induced mania, religious delusions. But this? It didn't sound fragmented. It sounded rehearsed, like a loop, precise and deliberate. 5 minutes later, Dr. Cleany walked in, the kind of seasoned ER doc who's seen it all and shows nothing. "Vitals are normal?" he asked, scanning the monitor. "Stable, no fever, no trauma, tox screen negative, pupils equal and reactive." Dr. Cleany stepped to the foot of the bed, folding his arms. "Sir, do you know where you are?" The man smiled, just faintly, then said, "The doors will not hold." Dr. Cleany glanced at me. "Page Psych. Start him on 5 of Haldol, 2 of Ativan M." I nodded, already drawing the meds into the syringe. As I leaned in to administer the injection, the man turned his head, slow, deliberate, and whispered, "Don't go home tonight." My hand jerked, the needle slipping slightly. I caught it, forced myself to steady, pushed the meds into the muscle of his arm. I stepped back fast, heart hammering. By 2:12 a.m., he was fully sedated, vitals stable, still muttering but no longer thrashing. Security stayed posted outside the room just in case. I was out in the hallway catching up on charting when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally I ignore those during shift, but something pulled at me, an unease I couldn't shake. I stepped outside into the cool, sterile quiet of the ambulance bay and answered. "Hello?" Static. Then a voice, raspy, barely audible, as if being forced through a throat not made to speak. "He's not sedated. He's watching you from the inside." The line went dead. I stood there, frozen, breath caught in my chest. I tried to call back, disconnected, no voicemail. When I returned to the ER, I walked past room 4. The monitors read normal. Respiration, heart rate, all within range, still sedated. But when I looked toward the small window, I saw him, sitting upright, eyes locked on mine, watching. That was when something else hit me, something that had been weighing at the back of my mind. My younger sister, Emily. She'd been living in a group home for 7 years, schizoaffective disorder. When she was 20, everything changed. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping, started talking to people who weren't there. Once, she disappeared for a week. They found her in a cemetery, barefoot, arms covered in shallow scratches, speaking Latin. Over the years, our parents tried everything. Therapy, meds, prayer groups. Nothing worked. I became her legal guardian after Mom died 2 years ago. I visited every Sunday, except this week, Joel's trip, the double shifts. I'd meant to go. At 3:07 a.m., I was reviewing labs at the nurse's station when the intercom buzzed. Security to Leah, ambulance entrance. "We've got a woman trying to get in. No ID, says she's your sister." My stomach dropped. "She what?" "Refuses to give her name. Keeps saying she has to warn you. Says he's not what he seems." I ran. Emily was standing in the ambulance bay, wild-eyed, hair tangled, wearing slippers and an old hoodie. I hadn't seen her like that in years. As soon as she saw me, she lunged. "You brought it here," she hissed, grabbing for my arms. "You shouldn't have talked to him. You let it in." "Emily, how did you get out? You were safe." "They opened the gate," she snapped, eyes darting, "and it walked through, wearing a man's skin." Security wrestled her back as she screamed. I just stood there, stunned. Then something surfaced in my memory, something small but unmistakable. When the John Doe had first come in, he had smiled at me. Not in greeting, not with kindness, with recognition. Emily was returned to the facility. I stayed. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to be alone. Maybe I couldn't leave him behind. By 4 a.m., the lights in room 4 began to flicker. The monitor glitched, though his vitals remained normal. Then the whispering started again. Only now, it wasn't just in his room. I heard it in the vents, in the hallways, in the supply closet. Backwards words like recorded speech spun in reverse. My name, over and over. Leah, 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 until the syllables dissolved into sound. At 4:43 a.m., the monitor flatlined. No alarms, no code, just silence. Dr. Cleany came in, checked the readout, checked him. Pronounced. I stood at the foot of the bed as they pulled the sheet over his face. That should have been it. But then I saw it, written in thick black marker on the underside of the sheet, the side touching the body. You brought the gatekeeper. No one admitted to writing it. Security footage showed no one entering or exiting the room after the code. Nothing. 3 days later, Joel came home. I told him what little I could manage. Blamed it on lack of sleep, stress, the usual excuses. That night I woke to find him standing at the foot of the bed, eyes open, staring. "Joel?" I whispered. He didn't answer at first. Then, in a voice that was wrong, off by just enough to curdle something in my chest, he said, "Do not open the second door." Then he collapsed, unconscious. He didn't remember it in the morning. That was 6 months ago. The man from room 4 was never identified. No fingerprints, no dental records, no missing persons reports. His body vanished from the morgue 3 days after his death. No explanation, no footage. Just gone. Emily's condition deteriorated. She doesn't speak English anymore, only reversed Latin. She doesn't respond to her name. I still work at Pine Brook, still take the night shifts. I tell myself it's just routine, that nothing's wrong. But sometimes, in those hollow hours before dawn, I hear the whispers again, floating through the vents, sliding under doors, reversed scripture, fragments of prayers twisted backwards. And sometimes, when I walk into a new room, a patient I've never seen before looks up at me and says my name before I introduce myself, like they already know me, like something passed through me that night and stayed behind. And I can't help but wonder, what if hospitals aren't just places where people die? What if they're where something else is born? In the end, it was the silence that got to me most. Not the screaming, not the alarms, not even the coughing fits that tore through the dark at 2 a.m. Not the sharp trill of machines flatlining or the frantic chorus of code blues echoing down the halls. No, it was the quiet, the kind that stretches just a little too long, the kind that seeps into your skin and settles deep, pulsing like a second heartbeat. I never planned on working nights. Definitely not at Briarfield General. The hospital was older than it looked, tucked between a faded strip mall and the remains of an abandoned Catholic school out on the edge of Ridley, Pennsylvania. Ridley was one of those towns that pretended it had more going on than it did. People moved there chasing peace and ended up with a whole lot of nothing. And stillness. So much stillness. I started as a CNA, a certified nursing assistant, after a breakup left me spinning, and I relocated without thinking it through. My mom's sister, Aunt Rena, lived in Ridley. She had a spare room and an electric bill she didn't want to shoulder alone. I needed a job that didn't ask for a degree and didn't care if I cried in the car between shifts. The night shift was all that was open, so I took it, meant to be temporary. You know how that story goes. They put me on the trauma wing. Not quite ICU, not quite ER, just this liminal space for people too unstable for standard med-surg, but not quite critical. Room 9 sat at the far end of the corridor, next to a linen closet we never used because the door wouldn't latch and always creaked open like it was waiting for something. There were 12 rooms in the wing, but room 9, that one got talked about, half jokingly, half not. People said the call light went off by itself, that patients in there said things, saw things. I brushed it off. Nurses are practical by necessity. When you deal daily with bodies breaking down and minds coming undone, ghost stories lose their shine. Still, sometimes I think we stay busy not just out of duty, but to keep from noticing what's lingering around us. It started with Mr. Grayson, 84, admitted after falling down his porch steps and shattering his pelvis. He had mild dementia, nothing too bad. Still called his daughter every morning, still recognized his primary doc by name. Tall man, thin, long fingers, sad blue eyes that didn't miss much. He always smiled when I brought in his water. "Thanks, sweetheart," he'd say. "Don't know what I'd do without you." He was kind, grateful, but he didn't like the chair in the corner. Room 9 had this cheap vinyl guest chair tucked in the far left by the window. Beige and creaky, same model every room had. But the second night, as I was fluffing his pillows, he tugged at my sleeve, eyes locked on the corner. "Don't turn your back to him," he whispered. I froze. "To who?" He nodded slightly toward the chair. The man sitting there. I turned. Nothing. Just shadows and bad upholstery. "Can you describe him?" I asked gently. Mr. Grayson tilted his head, thinking. Military-type hat, in his lap. Doesn't move much. I gave a small smile. "Might be the pain meds. You're on a new dose tonight." He didn't argue, just closed his eyes and exhaled. The second time was worse. Edna Rohr, 70-something, admitted with late-stage pancreatic cancer. It was palliative by then, DNR already in place. Her family flew in from Oregon, but they didn't stay overnight. She was sharp, made jokes about her prognosis, calm, even lighthearted in a resigned way. But on the third night, something shifted. I came in for rounds and found her pale, coiled tight like she'd been jolted awake. "Is he still there?" she asked, voice barely above a breath, staring straight ahead. I didn't have to ask who she meant. "He's polite," she murmured, lips dry. "Doesn't say much, just watches. But I feel like he's waiting for me." I sat with her longer than I should have, just holding her hand in the quiet, pretending the room didn't feel colder than usual. Eventually, she drifted off. She died that morning, peacefully. No struggle. But the way her eyes flicked toward that chair, just before sleep took her, has stayed with me ever since. I brought it up with Megan on a slow shift. She was the night charge nurse, 15 years in, sharp as a scalpel, could retape an IV line with one hand and chart with the other. We were at the desk around 3:00 a.m. The hallway buzzed low with fluorescent light. "You've seen it, haven't you?" I asked her quietly. She didn't look at me right away. She took a long sip from her Diet Coke, the straw bending slightly as she exhaled. Then finally she said, "Room 9's always been different." "Different how?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. She hesitated, gave a short laugh. "You'll think I'm nuts." "I already do," I teased, trying to lighten the mood. That got a proper laugh out of her, dry, tired, but she leaned against the counter all the same. "We had a guy back in 2007, Vietnam vet. No family, no next of kin, came in with pneumonia, ended up coding right there in the room. Cardiac arrest. They worked him for 22 minutes. She paused, voice quieter now. "He died alone. We didn't even know his first name at first. All he had was a VA card with J. Benton on it. What happened after? She shrugged. Nothing dramatic, but weird stuff started up. Lights flicking on in the bathroom when nobody was in there. IV pumps beeping without setting off alarms. Patients saying there was a man watching them, always in the same chair. She rubbed her arms like the memory itself had dropped the temperature. I don't think he's bad. I think maybe he just stayed. Maybe he thinks he's still on duty, waiting to be relieved. Things escalated with Anna Clark. She was young, 33, just out of emergency surgery after a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. Physically, she was recovering fine. But her second night, she kept hitting the call light over and over. When I came in, she was curled up on her side, facing the wall, trembling. "I don't want to die," she whispered. "You're not dying, Anna," I said, kneeling beside her, brushing her hair back gently. "I saw him," she breathed. "He was sitting there, just looking at me." "Who?" I asked, even though I already knew. She turned, eyes wide, and pointed at the corner. That man, military-looking, old-timey green coat, boots. I looked at him and just knew. He was here for me. I stayed with her till her breathing evened out. She never slept that night, but she didn't die either. In fact, she made a full recovery. Discharged a week later. I ran into her in the lobby on her way out. She held her discharge papers in one hand, suitcase in the other. "Was it a dream?" she asked, eyes scanning mine. I didn't know how to answer. After that, I started noticing the cold, not the usual hospital chill from overzealous AC or bad insulation. This was different, localized, like standing in front of an open freezer, only in that one corner, and only sometimes. I asked maintenance to check the vents. Nothing. Had housekeeping flag it. No complaints. One night, I stood in that corner myself, arms crossed, daring myself to feel nothing. But it wasn't in my head. It was like standing next to a body, not wind, not air, just presence. Then there was Nora King. She wasn't a patient. She was my friend, another CNA like me, filling in on an extra shift because someone called in sick. She used to roll her eyes at the Room 9 talk, said it was boredom-born nurse folklore, until the night she was the first responder to a fall alarm in Room 9. The patient had tried to get out of bed without calling. No major injuries. But when Nora came back to the desk, she looked like she'd aged 10 years in 5 minutes. Pale, shaking. She didn't say anything until end of shift. Then, in the break room, she sat down and whispered, "I saw him." "Was he sitting again?" I asked. She shook her head. "No. Standing this time. That was new." "What did he do?" "Just looked at me, then faded, like smoke. 3 seconds. Gone. She never worked another shift on that wing again. It's been 4 years. We don't joke about Room 9 anymore. Even the new grads stop laughing after a few shifts. Patients still describe the same man, same details, hat and lap, green uniform, boots. We've scoured the system. No record of any J. Benton, no discharge summary, no next of kin, no burial arrangements, just the echo of a man who died alone in a beige hospital room and maybe never realized he was allowed to leave. I don't think he means harm. I think he's waiting. For what, I don't know. Orders? Forgiveness? Maybe just to make sure no one else has to go out alone. As for me, I greet him now, quietly. "Evening, sir," I'll murmur as I pass Room 9. Everyone's accounted for. And maybe that's all he wants to hear. Maybe that's all any of us want. Someone to check in. Someone to say, "I see you." Because hospitals are full of echoes. Old footsteps, lives half remembered, final words, barely spoken. And even in the brightest corners, shadows linger. I still remember my first graveyard shift at West Pine General. It was one of those long, slow-burning November nights where the cold clung to your skin, sharp enough to bite, and the fog rolled in so thick you could barely see your own breath. The hospital's entrance sign blinked in and out through the mist like it was gasping its last. I'd just wrapped up orientation earlier that week, days full of protocol briefings, endless paperwork, and half-hearted nods from nurses too worn out to care about the newest face. But that Friday night I was really on my own. My first real shift, the kind where you either sink or swim. I was 24, fresh out of nursing school, brimming with that false textbook confidence they hand you with your diploma, the kind that evaporates the minute a patient flatlines. My name's Rachel Langley. I had just moved 2 towns over to be closer to West Pine, one of those aging regional hospitals that had been around since the 60s. The place was all long white hallways that echoed with your every step, walls yellowed with time and probably last painted before I was born. Still, the hospital had a good reputation. Reliable. Safe. Or so I thought. I clocked in at exactly 10:45 p.m. The floor was quiet. Too quiet. Just the distant hum of machines and the occasional squeak of sneakers on linoleum. I'd been placed on the med-surg unit on the 3rd floor. My supervisor, a tough old bird named Marcia, handed me a stack of patient charts without so much as a glance. "Room 314's restless," she muttered, flipping through papers. "Mr. Hobbs, terminal, morphine drips running low. Keep an eye. He's been talking to folks who aren't there." "Hallucinations?" I asked, pen poised over the chart. She shrugged, not looking up. "Maybe. Or maybe he's seeing things we don't." I forced a laugh. "That's comforting." Marcia didn't laugh. She just adjusted her sagging cardigan, an ugly, moth-eaten thing that looked like it belonged to someone's forgotten grandmother, and disappeared down the corridor. The shift started off routine enough. Vitals, chart updates. One patient complained the meatloaf tasted like cardboard. Another insisted he didn't need his heart meds because, and I quote, "I feel fine now." By 2 a.m., the floor had settled into that strange, hollow silence unique to hospitals at night. I was at the nurses' station with Megan, a second-year night nurse who looked only slightly older than me, but carried herself like someone who had already seen the worst parts of the job. Her curly brown hair was tied up in a messy bun, and she sipped from a thermos bigger than her forearm. "You're holding up better than most," she said, her voice low. "Most new grads cry by their second shift." I smiled wearily. "I haven't ruled it out yet." We both laughed, but it was the tired kind, the kind you let out when you're running on fumes and adrenaline. Then we heard it, a soft ding, not the overhead call bell, something else. The distinct creak of a door opening slowly. "Room 301. We both turned. The lights at the far end of the hall flickered once, just enough to make your stomach clench. A figure passed by, calm, slow, steady. An older woman in a pale uniform. "I thought Marcia was on break," Megan said, squinting. "She is," I said, already rising to my feet. "She heads to the basement lounge at 2 hours like clockwork." I started down the hallway. Each step felt louder than it should have been, echoing in the cold, sterile silence. When I turned the corner, the hallway was empty. Room 301's door was slightly ajar. That room was vacant. I peeked inside. The bed was stripped bare, lights off, no movement, no reason for that door to have opened. And yet, the air felt heavier in there, like someone had just been standing beside me, like the room hadn't had time to settle back into stillness. When I got back to the desk, Megan looked pale. "I don't want to freak you out," she whispered, "but do you know about Evelyn?" I blinked. "Evelyn? She used to work nights here, same floor, over 30 years. Megan hesitated, glancing down the hall. Everyone loved her. She was one of those nurses who made dying a little less terrifying. I waited. Her tone had shifted. "She passed away 5 years ago. Heart attack. On shift." Right here in the building. Megan's voice dropped lower. Some people say she never really left. I laughed. It came out nervous and thin. Come on. Megan didn't smile. You thought you saw Marcia? She said quietly. I think you saw her. I didn't know what to say. My chest tightened, but I blamed it on sleep deprivation. You'll see her again, Megan added, soft, almost like a warning. The next few weeks it kept happening, again and again, always between 2 and 4 a.m., always when the halls were still and the rest of the world felt suspended in time. Some of the nurses started talking more openly, in low voices and only when no supervisors were around. They said she'd appear in room 312, standing at the foot of the bed, hands gently folded, watching over patients as they slept. One CNA swore that she felt someone take the chart from her hands, only to turn around and see it placed neatly on the counter 5 feet away. No one had come near her, and patients noticed too. One night, a woman recovering from surgery looked at me as I checked her IV and said, "Please thank the old nurse with the kind eyes." She sat with me, hummed me to sleep. I froze. I hadn't stepped into her room in over 2 hours, but her monitors had been adjusted perfectly, more neatly than I'd ever managed. Still, no one on staff admitted to being there. Then came the night I stopped trying to rationalize it. It was mid-December. Snow had begun to fall in slow spirals outside, blanketing the hospital grounds. Flu season had hit hard, and we were badly understaffed. I was halfway through a brutal double shift. At 3:15 a.m., I went to check on Mr. Hobbs in room 314. I paused at the door. It was cracked open, and I could hear someone speaking inside. A soft voice. I stepped in slowly. Mr. Hobbs, frail and hollow-cheeked, was smiling. "You came back," he said. I hesitated. "Mr. Hobbs, it's Rachel. I'm just checking in." He didn't look at me. His eyes drifted to the chair in the corner. "She was just there," he whispered. "Said she'd stay until I wasn't scared anymore." I turned toward the chair. It was empty, but when I touched the armrest, it was warm, like someone had just stood up. After that, I started asking questions. Not officially, just quiet conversations in break rooms, half whispers over vending machines. That's when the stories came out. Some nurses rolled their eyes. Others, especially the older ones, just nodded quietly. One, Teresa, told me she'd heard humming once, right in the middle of a code blue. Amidst the shouting, the chaos, there was a soft, calming hum, as if someone were trying to soothe the dying. Another nurse said Evelyn had nudged her awake seconds before a monitor flatlined. It was always subtle, always gentle. She never frightened anyone. She never harmed anyone. She just helped. But then something changed. It started with Megan. She came in one night looking pale and shaken, her eyes red, hands trembling slightly. "I think she's trying to tell me something," she whispered. "I saw her in a dream." "Evelyn?" I asked. Megan nodded. She wasn't smiling this time. She looked worried, and she kept pointing, over and over, toward a wall. "Which wall?" I asked. "I don't know, but it felt important." Over the next few nights, others came forward. People who never mentioned ghosts, a CNA, even a doctor. They all described the same dream. Evelyn standing silently, urgently pointing at a wall. We compared details. The wall was always pale blue, with a faint hairline crack near the baseboard. We searched. Finally, we found it, in room 305. That room had been used for storage ever since the pandemic overflow. Old equipment, stacked beds, boxes of unused PPE, but the wall matched perfectly. We called maintenance. When they opened the drywall, they found it. Thick black mold, growing and spreading like rot through the inside of the walls. Above, a broken pipe had been leaking slowly for years, hidden from view. The spores were airborne, dangerous. The entire wing was shut down within hours. An HVAC overhaul was ordered immediately. Had she been trying to warn us? It's been almost a year since that night. We still see her now and then. Evelyn. Sometimes I'll catch a glimpse of her reflection in the dark glass outside the nurse's station. Or I'll walk into a room and smell lavender, just a trace, the kind she used to wear. Patients still whisper about the kind woman who visits them in the night. They're not scared. If anything, we all feel safer when she's around. Hospitals are strange places, full of life and death, grief and joy, beginnings and endings. And sometimes, something lingers, not out of anger or vengeance, but because they cared too much to leave. Evelyn is still doing her rounds, and every time I walk past the dim end of the third-floor hallway, I offer a soft nod, just in case she's watching. If you're reading this and you've ever felt someone near you in the quiet moments, someone who made you feel safe even when no one else was there, you're not alone. Sometimes the best nurses never stop caring, even after death. I never really believed in ghosts, not truly. I used to roll my eyes whenever someone brought up haunted hospitals or spirits trapped between worlds. I figured people just needed something, anything, to help them make sense of the strange or the unexplainable. A coping mechanism maybe, something to make grief and fear feel less raw. But I was wrong. It happened at St. Mercy General, one of the older hospitals in Chicago. The building's bones date back to the early 1900s. Parts of it have been updated. Modern wings filled with sleek machines, bright LED lights, and the sharp, clean sting of hand sanitizer. But not the East Wing. That part? It's different. No one really talks about it. The walls there feel closer, thicker somehow. The floors groan underfoot like they remember every step ever taken. And somewhere beneath all that, tucked under layers of renovations and years of forgotten maintenance requests, is the old basement. I'd worked the night shift at St. Mercy for 4 years, mostly in trauma. I'd never once had a reason to go down there, not until one night. But I should back up a bit. When I first started, I was fresh out of nursing school, still carrying around that strange cocktail of idealism and barely contained panic. They paired me with Lisa Novak. She was a seasoned nurse, tough, sharp, with a kind of detached efficiency that only comes from seeing too much for too long. Nothing rattled her. One slow night, Lisa and I were walking past the corridor near the east stairwell. She stopped short, turned to me and said, "Don't ever take the old stairs, not unless you absolutely have to." I laughed. "What's down there? Monsters?" She didn't laugh, didn't even smile, just looked me dead in the eyes and said, "No monsters, just something you don't want to see." Her words stayed with me for a while. But time blurs things. Codes, blood work, back-to-back double shifts, they all pile up, and those early memories get buried. Still, sometimes, when the nights were quiet and nurses gathered near the loading dock on smoke breaks, I'd catch whispers. Stories about cold pockets of air in the stairwell, about lights that flickered even when no one was around. About a woman, always a woman, seen at the end of the hall just for a second, before vanishing. It was always vague, always followed by nervous laughter or an exaggerated eye roll. But you know how it is in hospitals. Death has a way of clinging to the corners. People cope however they can. It was early December, the kind of night where the wind sounded like it was trying to claw its way through the walls. I was on the second floor, near ICU, reviewing a patient's chart when Daniel, our charge nurse, walked up, rubbing the back of his neck. "Hey, Ellie," he said, voice casual. "We're out of vacuum drains. Central Supply's closed already, but Sarah thinks there might be a box left in the old storeroom downstairs. You mind checking?" I looked up. "You mean the basement?" He nodded. "Yeah, near the old O wing. Should be a box of 50s down there somewhere. Won't take long." I hesitated. Something in me pulled back. A quiet, unexplainable resistance. But I didn't want to be the nurse who made a scene over a routine supply run. So I said sure, and got up. The old stairwell was behind a weathered wooden door tucked past radiology. Funny, I'd never noticed it before. When I pushed the door open, the hinges groaned, long and low, like something exhaling after a long sleep. Cold air rushed out, thick and musty, with a strange undercurrent of time. I flicked on my flashlight. The stairs were stone, narrow and steep, worn smooth in the center by decades of feet. My footsteps echoed around me, a hollow repetition that made the space feel more like a crypt than a corridor. Halfway down, I had the sudden sense I wasn't alone. I stopped, listened. Nothing. At the bottom, the door creaked shut behind me with a soft, final-sounding thud. I froze. Every part of me said, "Turn around. Go back." But I didn't. I couldn't shake the feeling that turning away would somehow make things worse. So I took a breath and kept moving. The basement stretched out in a low, narrow corridor. The ceiling hung just above my head, and the shelves lining the walls were rusted and sagging, filled with dusty boxes and forgotten equipment. The overhead lights flickered, weak, sickly yellow bulbs that cast more shadow than illumination. I found the supply labels and followed them deeper into the maze of shelving. And that's when I saw her. She was standing maybe 20 feet away, facing one of the metal shelves, perfectly still. At first, I thought she was another nurse, maybe someone else looking for supplies. But her uniform was wrong. An old-fashioned white dress, high-collared, long-sleeved, the kind you'd only see in black and white photos. A starched white cap rested neatly on her head. "Excuse me?" I called out. I called out again, louder this time. She didn't move. I stepped closer, cautiously. "Hey, are you all right?" Still no response. She lifted her hand slowly, like she was reaching for something on the shelf. Her movements were smooth, deliberate, almost too smooth, like she was moving underwater. Then she turned, just slightly, and she was gone. No sound, no motion, nothing but the empty space where she'd stood just seconds ago. I froze. My breath caught mid-throat. I wasn't imagining it. I saw her. I felt it. The air shift around me, heavy like a door had slammed shut behind someone just out of sight. There was a change in pressure, the kind that makes your ears pop and your instincts scream. I didn't wait. I grabbed the first box I saw, didn't even check the label, and bolted up the stairs 2 at a time. I didn't look back. When I got back upstairs, Daniel took one look at me and frowned. "Jesus, Ellie, you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." I swallowed, my voice hoarse. "I think I did. I saw someone down there, a woman. She was wearing an old nurse's uniform, and then she was just gone." He blinked. "A woman?" I nodded, still trying to catch my breath. "White dress, old-fashioned, hair pinned up. She didn't say anything, just vanished." Daniel stared at me for a moment, his face unreadable. Then he said quietly, "You're not the first to say that." Later that night, during our break, I brought it up to Lisa. We were sitting in the lounge, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, cheap coffee steaming in her hands. "We call her Clara," she said after a pause. She didn't even look surprised. "No one really knows where the story started," she went on. "Some say she was a nurse who died during the 1918 flu outbreak, worked herself to death treating patients until she collapsed in one of the wards. Others say that she took her own life, hung herself in one of the old surgical rooms." I stared at her. "That's just a legend though, right?" Lisa looked at me over the rim of her mug. "Isn't everything until it's not?" I couldn't shake it. I started asking around, but quietly, carefully. Night shift folks, custodians, the kinds of people who notice what others ignore. Even Miguel, an old security guard who'd been working there longer than most of us, had been alive. She walked right past me. Miguel told me one night, voice low. Plain as day, but her feet didn't make a sound. One of the janitors swore he heard crying from behind a locked basement room. A med student, pale, shaken, told me he saw her standing outside the morgue freezer, hand pressed gently to the door like she was trying to comfort someone on the other side. I stopped sleeping well. When I did, I dreamed of her, always just out of reach, watching, waiting, silent. I got obsessed. With Donna from medical records, I dug into old employee files, most of them yellowed scans from long-forgotten paper logs. Faded ink, names barely legible. But there she was. Clara W. Hensley, registered nurse, employed from 1916 to 1918. No listed death record. Just a note scribbled in the margin. Presumed deceased. Pandemic ward collapse. That part of the hospital had caved in during the height of the Spanish flu. Dozens died. Some bodies were never recovered. A few weeks later, I got called to assist with an elderly patient in the East Wing. After I left the room, I must have taken a wrong turn in the dark, because I ended up at the top of the old stairwell again. I should have walked away, but something pulled me forward. Curiosity, maybe. Guilt, definitely. I opened the door. This time the air wasn't cold, it was warm. Still, no mildew, no flickering lights. I stepped onto the first stair, gripping the railing, and made my way down. She was waiting at the bottom. She didn't vanish this time. She turned to face me, and I finally saw her clearly. Her face was kind, tired, the kind of tired that sits deep in your bones. Her eyes were sunken, full of sadness, but not menace, not anger. "I didn't mean to stay," she whispered. "I know," I said, my voice thick, my eyes stinging. "It's okay now." She smiled, just a small, grateful smile, and then like smoke, she faded into the air. No one's seen her since. The basement is still quiet, still strange, but the weight it used to carry, that suffocating heaviness, is gone. I think Clara finally finished her rounds, and now every time I pass the old stairwell, I stop, just for a second, not in fear, in respect. Because sometimes the dead don't come to haunt us. Sometimes they just want to finish what they started. I never really believed in ghosts, at least not the way movies show them. No floating sheets down dark hallways, no slamming doors from angry spirits. What I believed in was quieter, heavier, pain, death, and that suffocating stillness that settles in a room after someone dies on your shift. That kind of haunting is real. That kind of presence clings to the walls. My name is Emily Carter. I'm a trauma nurse at Langage Memorial Hospital, a mid-sized place nestled between two sleepy suburbs in southern Illinois. I've worked the night shift for almost 11 years, long enough to forget what normal sleep feels like, and long enough to know when something isn't just in your head. Langage is the kind of hospital that's always moving but never truly loud. Even when the ER fills with groans, sobs, and the harsh rattle of gurneys on tile, there's a weird hush underneath it all. Some people say the hospital was built on old farmland. Others claim there used to be a psychiatric hospital here in the 50s. Maybe it's just the old building, cold floors, flickering lights, the hum of air through aging vents. Hospitals always feel half dead. You don't need ghosts to feel it. But that winter night, something changed. It started the way it always does. Too quiet to notice at first. Late December. Snow blanketed the parking lot like ash, and the wind outside howled against the brick walls with a voice of its own. Inside, we were running short-staffed. Flu season had hit hard. The newer nurses were already cracking under pressure. That night, it was just me, Marcus, our youngest charge nurse, Carla, one of our seasoned night med techs, and Hal, an older security guard who walked the halls like he'd seen everything already. We were half joking about how dead the shift was going to be. Around 2:15 a.m., everything shifted. No ambulances, no traumas. The waiting room was nearly empty. Carla was restocking linens, Marcus was finishing up charting, and I was at the nurses' station going through labs. That's when I saw him. Just out of the corner of my eye near the automatic ER doors that lead to the ambulance bay. A little boy. He wasn't walking. He was just standing there. Still. I looked up, expecting a parent to come in behind him, but no one followed. He wore a thin gray hoodie, way too small for this kind of cold, and pajama pants that flapped around his skinny legs. Bare feet. His skin was so pale it looked almost blue under the fluorescence, like he hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. I stood up slowly. "Hey, sweetie," I called out, keeping my voice calm. "Where's your mom or dad?" No answer. He just stared at me. Not scared, confused, like he couldn't understand where he was or how he got there. I stepped out from behind the desk and took one cautious step toward him, and then he was gone. Not walked away, not turned a corner, just gone, like a light flicked off. I stopped cold. My arms prickled with goosebumps. I scanned the ER. Nothing. No sound, no movement. Marcus looked up from his computer, brow furrowing. "What?" I didn't answer at first. "Did you see a kid just now, by the doors?" He blinked at me. "No. Someone was here?" I shook my head. "Must have been. I don't know. I'm probably just tired. We had been buried in patients the last few days, and I hadn't had more than a couple hours of sleep in a row. But it didn't feel like a hallucination. Not the kind I'd expect anyway. It felt real. Sharp, around the edges. I didn't tell anyone else. What would I even say? Then, a few nights later during our break, Carla brought it up. "You ever see weird stuff on night shift?" she asked, tearing into a protein bar. "Weird how?" "Like, stuff you can't explain." I paused, watching her eyes flick to the security monitors. "Why?" She didn't answer right away. "Last night around 2, I saw a little kid standing by the supply closet, near the trauma bay. Thought maybe he was someone's sibling, but when I went to check, nobody was there." My heart stuttered. "How old?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. 6, maybe 7. Dirty hoodie, no shoes." We just looked at each other. Neither of us said anything more. But after that, people kept seeing him. Adam, one of the techs, swore he saw the boy slip behind the curtain in trauma room 2, right before a patient coded. Dr. Kayla Brandt, one of our newer ER docs, looked pale as paper one night after walking into the break room and nearly dropping her coffee. She said the boy was sitting in the corner, staring at the floor. When she stepped in, he looked up and smiled at her. The worst part? Security footage never showed a thing. We checked the cameras, over and over. Every time they'd flicker, just a burst of static, a quick glitch. And when the feed cleared, the hallway or the room would be empty. Not a shadow, not a movement. Just that sterile, humming stillness hospitals are so good at. Hal, our night security guard, avoided the topic like it might follow him if he acknowledged it. But one night, while walking me to my car through a crust of fresh snow, he broke his silence. Voice low, like it wasn't meant for the wind to hear. "He's been around longer than you think," he said. "I remember reading old incident reports when I first started, always during quiet shifts, always when it snows." That stuck with me. I started digging. It took a few weeks, a few carefully worded questions during smoke breaks and coffee refills. Quiet conversations with the older staff, the ones who'd been here too long to pretend everything could be charted and filed away. Eventually, I found something. In 1998, a little boy named Jonah Reynolds was admitted to Langage Memorial. House fire, 6 years old. He'd survived third-degree burns, severe smoke inhalation, a collapsed lung. Critical, yes, but he was stable. They thought he had a chance. Then something changed. His mother had dragged him from the fire, suffering burns over most of her body. She was rushed to the trauma room next door. She died within the hour. No one told Jonah. They wanted to wait until he was stronger, but he knew. The nurses said he cried for her all night, voice hoarse from smoke damage, asking where she was. At 2:17 a.m., he went into sudden cardiac arrest. Officially, it was unexplained, just one of those rare cases. But Sheila, an old nurse who retired a few years back, told me something else. She was there. said when she walked into his room. He was sitting upright in bed, smiling. "She's here," he whispered. Then his monitor flatlined. A week later, it happened again. Snowstorm. Power flickers. Backup generators humming like breath in a sleeping room. It was 2:17 a.m. I was in room 5 checking vitals on a post-op patient. Everything normal, but the air shifted, like something unspoken held its breath. I turned toward the doorway, and there he was. Same child, same threadbare hoodie, same pale bare feet on the tile. His face was empty, but his eyes, they settled on me like he recognized me, like he'd been waiting. I didn't move, didn't say a word. He raised one hand, fingers slightly curled, like he might reach out. But instead, he turned his head slowly toward the hallway, toward trauma room 2. A moment later, the code alarm shrieked through the ward. Trauma 2. We lost the patient within minutes. Since then, I've seen him 7 times, always when snow falls, always at 2:17 a.m., always just before someone dies. He doesn't try to scare us. Jonah doesn't scream or scratch or slam things around. He doesn't make the lights flicker, at least not on purpose. He doesn't do anything but stand there, still, watching, waiting. And somehow, every time I see him, the cold pit in my stomach isn't fear. It's sadness. Maybe he's still looking for his mother. Maybe she never came for him. Or maybe she's still looking too, and they've been just missing each other ever since. But whatever it is, he's real. We don't talk about it during handoff. New nurses aren't warned, but we all know. We recognize the signs. The cold draft in a hallway that should be sealed. Lights that flicker at the same time every year. Bare footprints tracked across the floor near the ambulance bay. Feet too small to belong to any adult. And they never lead anywhere. Last week I saw Marcus standing by the ER doors, staring into nothing. Pale. Quiet. "You saw him, didn't you?" I asked. He didn't turn, just nodded slowly. "Does it ever stop?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted to. But how could I lie to him? "No," I said finally. "But you stopped needing it to make sense." Because not everything in a hospital has a diagnosis. Not everything that haunts you bleeds. Some things just wait. And in the quiet hours of a winter night, when the ER stills and snow muffles the world outside, we wait with him. Just in case he finally finds what he's been looking for.